advertisers and management company of Sugar City FM 90.3. Nor are such statements necessarily supported or endorsed by the owners, managers, or advertisers of the station. While we encourage all to share their opinions, we do not support any comments that may slander, discriminate, or otherwise offend anyone, and we insist that you refrain from any such statements.
Welcome to the Customer Support Portal, where we have made it easier for you to contact us. It starts with your question, email, a message, phone call, or a search on our website. Our CSP provides prompt and efficient solutions to your problems. We pride ourselves on treating our clients responsibly and ensuring your information is kept safe. Log on to www.skndb.net and send us a ticket or email us at customersupport@skndb.com. You may also call us directly at 869-465-2288, extension 1322 or 954-353-1003.
If you have a dream, what are you waiting for? The Development Bank has what you need and more. We aim to build stronger communities. That's why we have so many opportunities. Business loans, student loans, we make a positive difference in your life, in your life, in your life, in your life, yeah. Financing your dream home, we make a positive difference in your life, in your life, in your life, in your life, yeah. Development Bank of St. Kitts and Nevis. We make a sustained positive difference in your life.
Fellow citizens, near and far, join Newrish Nital on Sugar City 90.3 for Fear No Favor.
Where is the cancer and no runner come out for war?
Tune in to 90.3 on your FM dial. Log on to sugarcityfmstkits.com or download Simple Radio app from the Google Play Store. And join Newrish Nital every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. as Newrish Nital tackles the issues and take your call. Fear No Favor. Every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. on Sugar City 90.3 FM.
Good evening and welcome to Fear No Favor. Tonight we are very fortunate to have sharing the same space with us Dr. Natalie Osbourne. I wouldn't go into any depth with respect to putting the various handles to her name because she would quite competently do that herself. Dr. Osbourne, welcome to Fear No Favor.
Thank you for having me here. Good evening to our listening audience and good evening to everyone here in the studio. It's lovely to be here with you. So I am Dr. Natalie Osbourne, as Mr. Nital just said.
Okay, so we're going to have a lovely session here this evening. It's nice when you would have taught thousands of people and you can now come around and have your input, your impartation of knowledge being amply manifested in the gray matter that lies between those two ears. And I'm very happy to have Dr. Osbourne here with us. And we're going to have an extremely lovely session. Informative and instructive. And I could assure you that this is going to be with some regularity. So we would decide on that going forward. But this is not the first or the last time she'll be here with us. She was here already. And she did an excellent job, and we're very happy to have our studios blessed with her sharing this common space. Dr. Osbourne, can you tell the audience about your background, where you are from, etc.?
Well, I a Kittian. I'm from the Federation, the Great Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, and I'm very proud to say that. I'm very patriotic. But I hail originally, as we said when we were small, I was born in Connery. My mother is originally from Connery, and my father from Keyon. But from a very young age, I think I was around 2 years old, we moved, all of us, to Keyon. It was a huge family, both parents and 8 kids. So we always say we were the family of 10, just the 10 of us. So I can say that I belong both to Connery and Keyon, but grew up mostly in Keyon. I went to the Keyon Primary School. I went also to the Keyon High School. So anytime I see any student now in the uniform that represents the school that I went to, I'm filled with pride, I'm filled with joy, and I'm always encouraged to see that. So I am above all, though, a patriotic person, and I'm a Kittitian, and I serve everyone no matter where they're from. I also went to the Bastia High School, or what we used to call Sixth Form.
Form.
Yes.
That was when persons would have come from Keyon, Sandy Point, all over from the various high schools, because Sixth Form was part of the Bastia High School compound.
Yes.
It was housed at the Bastia High School. Yes, you go into 6B first,
Yes.
and then you go into 6A. Right.
Correct.
Medicine, like some people would say, being a pastor is a calling. Do you feel that you were called to this profession?
I truly think that I was called to this profession. As we spoke off camera, you mentioned that you have a granddaughter, and she's just, 2 years old, 3?
Yes.
And she's very much interested in the science, and she wants to be a doctor. I can remember myself from that very tender age, always wanted to be involved in medicine, and always wanted to be a doctor, and specifically a surgeon, because I like the dynamics and the energy that a surgeon has, and I think that my personality fit that profession quite well. And also the passion that I have. Most times if you're involved in any particular career you need and that you love, it is said that once you have a passion for what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And that is how I feel. So you should always, the passion that I have for surgery allows me to get up, go in every day, continue to work, irrespective of the day or time of the day, whether it is holiday or not, always being there for my patients. So I do have a passion for being for medicine and for general surgery specifically, and that was since I was a young child.
How did you manage to stay on that trajectory? At such a young age, you know, your mind would have gone from maybe chemistry, biology, even contemplate doing some accounts. How did you manage to keep on that pathway to become? Were you encouraged by your parents? Did they know of your ambition?
I remember, I come from a very humble family. Both of my parents did not have any formal education. My mother's now passed away, I think in 1997, and we were raised mostly by our father. And my father's a humble man. We call him a jack of all trades. Trucking, he does carpentry, he does whatever he could do to survive and to take care of his kids. But I always wanted to be a doctor. As a humble individual in our background, in our community, the resources were never there, so you wonder how you would get to that dream. But I remember dreaming and praying and having that desire, and I think that I manifested it. And then the opportunity came up, and I was able to get that opportunity to study medicine, and I really took advantage of that opportunity. But I was focused and I was disciplined, and from very early on, I chose the subjects that were important in pursuing medicine. In high school, you were my teacher as well in chemistry.
Yes.
I remember you taught me chemistry in high school as well. And I know that those subjects, chemistry, biology, physics, were important. So I chose those very early on and stayed on that path. Not knowing how the doors would open, but eventually that they did. And I'm grateful for that.
Okay. Lovely. and you stayed on that trajectory. And I'm happy because many persons get distracted and never did come back on that path. Or many would have lost interest in that area. Because to start 9 years, 11 years, how many years would it take normally to become a doctor?
Well, it all depends on the program, but usually it takes at least 6 years between your
At least.
pre-med studies, your medical studies, and that's even before you go on to specialize, because those are another 4 or 5 years. All depends on what area you're specializing in. Yes, so it takes.
Those years seem to be so intimidating. There are persons who really would like to become doctors, but when they hear about 7, 8, 9 years, it's like they want to wake up today and realize they would have gone through some sublimation and would have taken up those years in studies. So you have to be strong as well.
Correct.
9 years ahead of you of studies could be intimidating. Were you ever intimidated before you start?
No, because I remember a saying that the years will pass whether or not you occupy the time or you do the time. So it's best to do the time, because often we would look back and say, oh, 4 years has passed by. I could have already gotten my first degree, my bachelor's degree. And we have those regrets. But the years will pass irrespective of. So it's best that you engage in something productive. And I could remember hearing stories of one of my mentors. He always said when he sat in his classes, when he was studying, and he kept thinking, oh man, what did I get myself into? Do I look at all these years? I could have been doing something easy. I could have been done and do accounts or computer science. But once you have a passion for medicine, the dedication and the stamina, you would eventually get through. And then once you're there on the other side, you would never regret it.
You never regret. And you cannot continue if you never did start.
No.
And if you never did start and you can't continue, you will not end either. Where did you do your medical training?
Oh, I'm proud to say that I studied in Cuba, and that now I realize has been a tremendous blessing to me and to the community, because now we have such a deep wealth of an influx of Spanish individuals. We have that large Spanish community. And I'll give you a quick story. Just on Monday, I was in the office and 2 ladies came to see me, and they started chattering back and forth. One was saying, you talk, I don't know what to say. You know English better than me. And they're both speaking in Spanish, but I'm understanding them. And then I started responding in Spanish, asking, how are you, what's going on, and so. And they both started laughing out loud because they realized that I understood them. So that has helped so much. And I've been introduced to a new culture, a new music, studying in Cuba. And it was able to, with our relationship that we have now with Cuba, bridge a lot of the divides that we once had. And I'm proud of those years that I had in Cuba. So I did my first medical degree there, and I also went back and specialized in general surgery.
Did you know Spanish before you started?
No, I did not. That was one of the things that we all had to struggle. That first year, we call that year of preparation. We spent a year learning Spanish, learning the basics, doing hundreds of hours of classes in Spanish. We also took some classes in basic science and stuff. It was all to introduce us. So that entire year we did that, and then we each went on to a different areas of studies.
Because there's a tendency when we are into sciences, the languages are kept a bare. We don't usually get to mingle. I can recall going off to university to do my chemistry degree, and I had to do 2 years of Spanish. And I wonder, what is this? I knew absolutely nothing about Spanish. I just looked at you, professor. If it seemed as though she wanted me to say yes, I say yes and nod my head. If it's no, I say no. If I'm not too certain, I shrug my shoulders and I smile. Just to keep the communication going, but I had absolutely no idea what the professor was saying. Well, I went down to do 4 semesters, 2 years, and I'm proud. I did my people proud. I got 4 A's at that. So sometimes when you're forced to do things, then you just have to. And like you say, you did a year prep and everything else. Well,
And the interesting thing is that it wasn't just that you did a course in Spanish. All your lessons were done in Spanish. All the entire studies were done in Spanish. All of your professors, your biochemistry professor, your physiology professor, everything was done in Spanish. And we struggled, I must admit, those who spoke English as a first language, we struggled, but we were able to overcome, and that's the beauty. And now we have that language, and I'm very proficient in Spanish now, so that is always an addition for us today.
congratulations. Buena suerte. I don't like people to know that I know some Spanish.
Oh, okay,
so
that's
let me
good.
still pretend that I do not. know.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, the whole session was done in Spanish. And you managed to hold on.
Yes.
You know the funny thing about science? Don't care how much Spanish the professors them want to talk about. Sodium chloride would always be NaCl. You understand?
Correct.
Right. Carbon dioxide would always be CO2.
Yes.
There is no Spanish way of writing
Yes.
CO2. It's one universal way.
And another thing that is interesting as you speak that most of medicine is like Latin, so a lot of the words were quite familiar to us, and they're quite universal.
It
Yes.
is entwined in our English
Yeah.
language as well. We inherited a lot of words from the Latin culture. How long have you been in the medical field, and what is your area of specialty?
I would tell you my age once I start talking then, because
But I should know. I taught you.
I graduated in 2006, and I came home back to the Federation and started working. I remember that particular time as a young doctor just graduated. I was so fearful after all these years of studies. What would I do? What was going to happen? Was I ever going to work? And I remember the first time I started working, I was so excited, wanting now to contribute. So at first we did what we call an orientation, because as you're studying in a foreign country, you have to get familiar with the customs and the practice in our country here. So we were able to do different rotations, familiarize ourselves on the major areas like pediatrics, general surgery, OBGYN or gynecology and obstetrics. And then my passion was always in surgery. So once I was done doing my orientation, I was assigned to the surgical ward as what we call a house officer. That's where I work with the surgeon, diagnosing, evaluating, and caring for the patients, assisting in the operating room as the assistants, the first assistants to the general surgeon. So I spent many years doing that. I think approximately 10 years. So I had that background of working in general surgery, and then I would return to Cuba to pursue a second degree in general surgery. And that was those years that I spent as a house officer in general surgery was very instrumental, and it kept me ahead of my peers because I went in with a lot of knowledge, practical skills, and all the experience that I would have gained from my mentor here. So I think in all, I've been a doctor now for over 16 years, but a general surgeon for approximately 4 now.
4 now. Okay. Congratulations.
Yes.
I know the journey was long. Okay. Our next item for us to discuss, to put into the public's domain, as a young surgeon, what is your perspective on mentorship?
Well, I think that mentorship is actually the foundation of medicine and any major career, because those who come before us are the ones that pave the way. And where I am now, and where many of my colleagues are now to this day, is as a result of having mentors. And we do what we call continual medical education, where the older or the senior doctors are able to educate and inform. So my mentorship has helped me so much as an house officer, as I said earlier, I was able to learn so much from the surgeon whom I work with and from the other medical specialists that I was able to then implement in my studies as a surgical resident. And mentorship has helped me to grow even at this day. Because as a young surgeon, even though you come back and you think that you have a degree, you've arrived, there's lots of things that you do not know. Because experience is what builds knowledge. And I remember I had a particular textbook while I was studying. And at the end of each chapter in that textbook, they always ended with tricks and tips of a senior surgeon. And that always stood out to me because there are certain things you learn and you know that comes only with time and experience. Because as a young surgeon, you're taught A, B, C, but with experience and years, you're able to know how to do certain things, how to get the best outcome, certain things that are with your experience, you know. And I have learned that from my mentor, who I would say now, has been Dr. Cameron Wilkinson for many years. We've worked together. When I was a house officer, I was his house officer working on the surgical ward along with the other general surgeons that were there. I think oftentimes we had some surgeons from Cuba during those period time. And Dr. Wilkinson has taught me so much in the field of medicine. And so my knowledge and my surgical acumen has been increased significantly from my years, because as a young doctor you do not know everything, and if you do not associate or align yourself with someone who can impart their knowledge and their experience, you will not grow, which is important. And I would always encourage anyone. And many of us who are now doctors and now specialists would have learned so much from some of the older surgeons. So I would think that mentorship is extremely important, and that is the foundation of medicine.
You know, it is interesting because I made a post yesterday saying that the more I learn is the more I realize I do not know.
Correct.
And that is so true.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you feel like I just have 2 more steps, but like you're going for those 2 steps and you never reach, like an asymptote. In mathematics we call it an asymptote, where you get ever so close but never reach. Like you're taking a half step going forward. Every step you made, you take a half step of that going. You'll never reach because you have to take half. You'll reach very, very close, but you'll never actually touch that spot, right? And I don't think you could have had someone better than Dr. Cameron Wilkinson maintain you to such an extent. The only place you could have gotten it better would have been in heaven. He is such a fantastic, good mental acuity, understanding, has passion for what he does, and he's empathetic. He could be firm but friendly at the same time. He never let friendship override his firmness, because we're dealing with lives.
Yes.
And that is key. And you know about that oath that you took, the Hippocratic oath, never to cause injury to your patients. Well,
I remember that something that I learned from Doctor very early. And he always said, you, as a doctor, you must be available, you must be accessible, and you must be affordable. And that has been ingrained in me over these years. And oftentimes when people see me get up really early, it's not that any particular person is telling me I have to. I'm there at the hospital at a particular time. I want to ensure that I see my patient on time, ensure that I do my best. You get a call, you know you have to go in. You have that sense of urgency to do that because of that discipline. And I saw him do this for many years. For the years that I worked with him, he went above and beyond as a doctor. And those are some of the things that he would have imparted on me and that have become. And this was one of the conversations we had before he left, and he said to me, Osbourne, no matter what, you got to keep doing the right thing, irrespective of. Keep coming in early, doing your best for the patients, being disciplined, even though no one is watching. You have to have that sense within you of that and that discipline that you keeping up the standards. And he always speaks about holding the standards high.
That conscience
Yes.
is what you call it. That
Yes.
conscience. That even when you feel like you don't have it in to go,
Yes.
that inner tug would say you have to go. It is good right now that we have peace amongst the once warring factions, because back then I think that Dr. Wilkinson was at the nucleus of many calls. And he was just going, and could have hardly taken, I don't know if my memory serves me correctly because he's a very good friend of mine. I don't know if he would have ever taken up to a month vacation. I must ask him one of these days what the longest vacation he would have ever had prior to current situation. But he was just going. Take off 2 days to get a jump up in the carnival and maybe halfway through one song and the other he's called to the hospital.
That is so
And
true.
that is it. Had you ever get that sense that, look, I ain't taking on this one?
You're asking me
Yes,
that?
yes.
Sometimes we laughed. I remember having conversations and we would have laughed and said, man, if I could do it all over again, just I would be an accountant. Because you get to enjoy your weekends, you get to enjoy your holidays, but still the passion and the draw to it. But that is when the days are frustrating and the days are long and you feel like that. You say that if I would do it again, I'll be an accountant. But we both still have the passion. I still have the passion and the desire to serve in this capacity as a surgeon.
I kind of take offense when you talk about we'll be accountants. Because accountants will leave the office most of the time 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. Because if you try to balance that balance sheet and it doesn't balance, you have to look for that penny that it is off by. Because no longer would the owner of the business accept an account they call it suspense account. Suspense account means something is wrong, but I cannot find it, so I'll find it sometime later. You cannot put out yourself to be a good accountant and filling up the people's balance sheet with suspense account, meaning that I'll look for it sometime later. You have to find it there and then.
But that was only just in
Yeah, I
joking.
know,
But
I
I
know.
say that because you said you can look for it later. With surgery, there's a sense of urgency. You can't wait
Yes.
until later. So you have to go
Right,
in now.
you have to.
You have to
And
go in now.
before you even mention that, I said they usually say police are police for 24 hours a day, all day, every day. Now I wonder if the year has it in 390 days, because surgeons are surgeons for more than 365 days a year. And not that we have a leap year every year, so we have 366. But the kind of hours that they put in, when you add those hours, this is a situation where the sum seems to be greater than the addition of its parts. Because I'm certain sometime when the day is finished, you wonder if this day had in 34 hours instead of the usual 24 or the usual 8 hours per day. Because it could be tiring, eh? And
Yes,
I
it
really
can.
want to laud you all for remaining steadfast in your commitment to saving lives with that superior beam of which nothing greater can be perceived, the Almighty God. But we have to keep him in it. He has to be in it. Yes. Do you have a mentor?
Well, I guess you heard me mention it earlier because as I spoke to the
Yes.
previous question, I do, and we have already expressed to you that a mentor is very important usually, because what happens, most of the paths that we are on have been trod and treaded by persons who've gone before us. And those persons have made the path clear. You know, just as in any dirt track, you've trod that many years, you have a pathway there. And so that is important of a mentor to help guide and lead you ahead. And I do have a mentor when it comes to medicine because of the years and the knowledge that has been imparted to me by working alongside Dr. Wilkinson. My surgical skills, my acumen, and my ability to diagnose, my clinical acumen has improved significantly. And he's been able to point out certain things. Osbourne, this is what you need to focus on. weed out what is important, what is not so important, get into the heart of the matter in terms of making diagnosis in a more quickly and more efficient way, being able to assist the patient effectively and efficiently. I've learned so much, and in the operating room, just working on the other side from him, my surgical skills have improved, learning how to do things more efficiently, always. And he has this way, when we're in the operating room, he said, you're here to work, we're focusing on the case, we'll joke, we'll laugh afterwards. So he always puts the patient first. So that is a discipline that I've learned as well. So once I get in there, game on, you're focusing on what you need to do. The discussions, the laughter happens after, and you just have to make sure you do the best for the patient at that time.
Because you have to learn by osmosis sometimes, by just looking on.
Yeah.
It isn't all the time somebody would explain something to you. Sometimes before they explain it, you already followed closely enough to have learned from osmosis. And I think that is the beauty. You have to be willing to learn, open-minded, because as much as we might have done hundreds of surgery, it is my opinion that every surgery is different. It might come under a particular category, but each individual is made up differently. And anytime you have to carry out a surgery on somebody, it is almost, some aspect of it would be fresh. There's a nucleus of commonality where you would have seen this a million times, but there's the occasion when you might just see something that is a little different to the previous one. Am I correct in thinking that way?
Yes, you're correct. Yes, you're correct. You made an important point that stuck out with me, and I would say this when you said learning by osmosis. And I remember many a days I would say, but doctor is not sitting down and discussing a topic or thinking, having a conversation. But he led by example, and you learn those examples, and you learn how he did things. You learn the level of discipline, you learn the level of follow-through. And I was always so impressed by the amount of things that he can get through in one day. And I said, man, I have to do that. Why am I not pushing more? Why am I not doing? So it's not so much about speaking, it's about leading with your actions. And no matter what, he was a senior surgeon for many years. He still came in every day. Sometimes I would say, Doc, I got this. It's easy. You could relax today. And he still wants to come in, that level of discipline. And I've learned those things. So mentorship is very important. And what he has instilled in me, I think it's going to take me to the rest of my life.
Do you think that you are approaching, maybe not just now, but next several years, where you could firmly establish having a mentee, somebody who you now mentor?
Well, knowledge, the important thing about knowledge is to keep passing it on, because or else it will die with us. And it is important. If there is another young individual who is interested in general surgery, of course I would love to mentor them. Or they're interested in any aspect of medicine, of course I could see myself mentoring, because I have gained so much from having a mentor. It is important to give back in that way as well too. Because it's about passing the baton along. You've got to pass the baton along. Because one day I won't be here, and we have to make sure that there's succession, and we have to make sure that we can help. And that is being patriotic, passing on the information, not being selfish with your knowledge, so that others who come behind you would learn and would be able to serve as well. So I have learned, and I am striving to serve to the best of my ability, and because of the examples that has been left through him to me.
Regardless of how much you would have done, like I said a while ago, there would be occasions where things seem a little bit different. Mm-hmm. If something is remarkably different and you see it as a teaching opportunity, those who would have gone through it, do you have sessions where those things are shared with other doctors, like post-mortem? I had this and this was happening, this person was pregnant, but the intestine were going outside of the child, and we had to give the person the option of doing whatever.
Yes.
There are some unique situations
Yes.
where we can use as learning experiences.
course, yes.
Do we have that culture at our hospital?
We can improve on that, but we do have those discussions at time. Like, for example, a specific case that happens on the medical service that involves the internist or involves the OBGYN gynecologist, you'll have that discussion. Sometimes you have discussion one-on-one, and you get close to that individual and you explain and you discuss. So we do have that. In a general forum, I wish we would do that more, but you can always approach, and often we do that, the individuals, consultants. You would talk to the pathologist, what is his idea? So we exchange ideas and stuff like that often. So we do that.
Yeah, you would have to be.
And you have to do that.
You have to. Unless we'll already be moving forward, but without any upward mobility, because we cannot afford to become stagnated. And as a surgeon too, there would be new developments.
Yes.
So there's a tendency to search beyond my capacity. Any bit of elasticity that you can put into that capacity that you have, even just a centimeter more, will go to improving the person that you are as a surgeon. Always looking for that opportunity.
Correct.
Always, yes. Are you in private practice?
Yes, I serve both publicly and privately. A typical day for me would start at the hospital. Oftentimes I'm there, often the first doctor on the ward, around 7:30, seeing my patients on the unit, go to the clinics, see the patients that are in the clinics. Oftentimes, if there's an emergency, you have a case to do and things like that. So that is how my day usually starts. And then I would then see patients privately at the office. But continuity of care never stops. Even though you leave the hospital, your phone is there, your phone is ringing, they're calling you if you're on call. And so that is how a typical day for us work. I would start in the hospital, and then I'll continue privately in my office, which I've started just recently. One of the things I thought was important when I came home first, as we spoke about mentorship, was to take my time. Don't rush into private practice. Be led, study the senior doctors, be influenced, learn from them. So I spent some years there working under the mentorship and teaming up with Dr. Wilkinson. And that is how I started. And then eventually I went into private practice because I felt that it was important to get a good footing. Because once you're in private practice and you're seeing patients on your own, you have to make sure that you're doing the best for the patient, making the correct diagnosis, and trying to get the best outcome. So.
When a surgeon has private practice, it would not always just involve persons who had surgery. Am I correct? Because you would have done your studies before specializing. So you still would have the ability, the capacity, the mental acuity to deal with somebody who might be showing symptoms of other stuff. Am I correct?
Yes,
there?
you are, because at first, foremost, you are a doctor, you are a general, like a general doctor. That's how all of us start before you go down into specializing in a particular area. So, of course, I'm able to treat a patient of mine who has diabetes. I'm able to treat a patient who has a hypertension that is easily controlled. But what we usually do, and it's important to know your limitations, if that is not your area of specialty, it is important for referral. So at that point, if I find that it's difficult for me to control the patient with their diabetes, their hypertension, then I want to pass this patient on to the hands of somebody,
Like an internist?
an internist who can add more to that case. So that is why it's important to do such. But there are certain things, the common coughs and colds, if you have patients who are quite familiar and comfortable with you, they'll always come back to see you, and you'll be able to manage some of those basic cases. But referral is important.
Because it would be unethical to stick with a case that is beyond you.
Yes.
It's outside your bound. Each person would have a limit. There could be various stuff, but when something is outside your bound, it becomes unethical for you to still try to maintain it instead of referring it to somebody who can dig a little deeper because of the area that they would have studied. Do you find you are working in, sometimes you might have a surgery to perform, and maybe halfway through, 3/4 of the way through, You realize that this will take a team rather than just the surgeon alone?
Of course, one of the limitations we have here, because in most big first world countries, when you're doing any surgical procedure, it's an entire team. 2 or 3 surgeons are at the table, along with the nursing staff, the technicians, everyone else. Because of our limitation, and oftentimes we've had one surgeon. We've come from that era where we've had one surgeon, we'd have 2 surgeons and stuff. So oftentimes you're limited. But if you have a really difficult case, it's always best to invite someone in. You may go in and you're thinking you're going to remove the appendix, but you realize that it's an ovarian cyst, an ectopic pregnancy, and in that time it is important to call in the gynecologist. Maybe you have an issue that there is a blood vessel that is bleeding. You may need assistance from the vascular surgeon, things like that. So that is important. That's how we normally manage our cases.
Let us take a quick break. Allow the good doctor to have a drink of water before we continue.
Welcome to the customer support portal, where we have made it easier for you to contact us. It starts with your question, email, a message, phone call, or a search on our website. Our CSP provides prompt and efficient solutions to your problems. We pride ourselves on treating our clients responsibly and ensuring your information is kept safe. Log on to www.skndb.net and send us a ticket or email us at customersupport@skndb.com. You may also call us directly at 869-465-2288, extension 1322, or 954-353-1003.
If you have a dream, what are you waiting for? The development bank has what you need and more. We aim to build stronger communities. That's why we have so many opportunities. Business loans, student loans, we make a positive difference in your life, in your life, in your life, in your life. Yeah, financing your dream home, we make a positive difference in your life, in your life, in your life, in your life. Yeah. Development Bank of St. Kitts and Nevis. We make a sustained positive difference in your life.
Fellow citizens, near and far, join Newrish Nital on Sugar Soda 90.3 for Fear No Favor.
Where is the cancer man? No runner come out for war.
Tune in to 90.3 on your FM dial. Log on to sugarcityfmstkids.com or download Simple Radio app from the Google Play Store. And join Newrish Nital every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. as Newrish Nital tackles the issues and take your call. Fear No Favor every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. on Sugar City 90.3 FM.
Welcome back to Fear in Our Favor, and we have a surprise call. Good evening, Doc.
Good evening. Good evening, Dr. Osbourne. Good evening, Nital.
Hi, good evening. How are you?
I'm fine. I've been listening to the show and looking at both of you and really impressed with what I'm hearing. And Nital, I want to tell you that I'm very, very impressed with Dr. Osbourne and how she has presented herself tonight. And I just want to endorse every single thing that she has said. What Dr. Osbourne hasn't told you is that I met Dr. Osbourne many, many years ago. Remember she came to my office as a young school child, and she told me one of these days I'm going to be sitting right at this desk. I asked her which desk. She said yours.
And she's now doing it.
Well, and I thought to myself, what is wrong with this child? But she's now doing it, and I am very, very proud of her. I came home in 97. I spent 25 years there. I said, as you read in my retirement letter, that I knew from the beginning that I could not run with the baton forever, but I wanted to run the best race that I could when I was given the baton. And I also knew that I had to pass the baton on to someone else. And you know about athletics because I've beaten you before in many races in Bastia High School. And sometimes the person you're going to pass the baton on to.
We're just talking about gyms. And I just talked to Dr. Osbourne about gyms. And I told her that if ever she had a gym, she can come and I can interpret it for her. Because that's a course I took as part of my clinical psychology. So I would take some time out and try to analyze this dream that you had and see what might have caused that. Okay.
Yeah, so you have a box within which you have to pass the baton.
That zone, yes.
And yes, and I was very happy that Dr. Osbourne started running from very early within the box and started up to the speed that was necessary. So when I passed the baton on to her, I knew that she can take it comfortably to the finish line. And so I'm very proud of the person who she has become. And I believe that the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis can rest assured that they will be in good hands.
I'm absolutely certain of that.
Yes, and I know that she was surprised with this call because, and I want to go to heaven, so I'm going to
tell the truth now.
find out, because you kept calling me, asking me if I can join in tonight, and I told her that I was not going to be available. And so I know it was a big surprise to her, but I know once you ask me to do something, we go way back.
Way back.
Way back. And so I know you will always be there for me and I'll always be there for you. So I could not pass upon the request that you made for me to call in tonight.
Yes, and we are so happy. There are many persons listening, and they're happy to hear your voice. I haven't heard it in quite a while either. The time will come when we'll have our own conversation and put it in the public domain.
That is so. But I also want to tell everybody who is listening out there that, no one is indispensable. And so I was in a position where I knew that I could only do what I was doing there for a limited period of time, and I contributed 25 years, a quarter century, to the people of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. And when I knew that I could pass things on into capable hands, that is when I opted to move on to the next phase of my life. And I remember listening to you earlier on, and you were asking about vacation. I can tell you that in no 1 year I took more than 10 or 12 or 14 days.
Wow. So. Wow. I see shivers coming up on the skin of Dr. Osbourne.
And you know what? He used to tell me vacation is for weak people and things like that. and when I took my vacation, he'll then call me out to work. I'm like, why? Why are you on vacation? Because he believes so much in working and being consistent and that level of discipline.
Yes.
Yes. I also used to tell her that you can't call in sick one day and be eating the next day. It means that you were not sick.
You were not sick. You should have lost your appetite at least.
Yes.
But to tell you the truth, those are the discipline that he's instilled in me, that I won't take a sick leave. I would hardly take a vacation. And you feel so, as you said earlier, there's a sense of guilt, a sense of obligation if you do not
Conscious.
get a consciousness that you have, that you've got to get up every day. You've got to go and see your patients every day, because there's certain details you don't want to miss. So you want to ensure that you see your patient every single day. You know?
And you mentioned something about the passion.
Yes.
Once you have fun doing what you're doing, you would never work a day because you see it as having fun.
Yes.
And that passion is important. Very, very important for you to continue along that trajectory without getting diminishing returns.
Yes.
Because sometimes it steps in. But that passion tends to neutralize it, like an acid-base titration.
You and your chemistry.
I will tell you too, Nital, reading is important,
Yes.
and I want to say this to any young person who is out there listening, because there's what's called continuing medical education, and you always have to educate yourself. I can tell you that I have a Kindle on my iPad, and just tonight I got a notice saying that I have read every day for the last 365 days.
Wow.
And the point I want to make is, I always tell myself, and I want to tell anybody out there, you must always tell yourself that you will know more tomorrow than you knew today. And even if you have to read just for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or half an hour, knowledge is power. And you always have to make sure that you educate yourself.
Yes.
And it is continuing.
Because I indicated to Dr. Osbourne that I made a post indicating that the more I learn is the more I realize I do not know. You would have to fill that void.
Yes.
The more you learn is the more you realize that you do not know, because there's always something to learn. Always. Life is about learning. It's a learning curve. You never stop. It's not a learning line where you stop somewhere at the other end.
And medicine is forever changing. When I started medicine, there was nothing called HIV. You understand? And there's so many other diseases that have come along since then. And so if one were to put the book down after they finish medical school, they would be totally out of touch. And medicine changes so often. There's things that you learned as the standard of care when you graduated, and a few years later, it changes. And so that's the only how you can stay abreast and prepare yourself and make yourself relevant.
And sometimes they do not come with any script, like COVID.
Interesting. That was a tough one. Myself and Dr. Osbourne, we worked together for a long time. And I remember when the pandemic started and I went to the forefront. I remember Dr. Osbourne asked me a question. She said, "You're a surgeon?" I said, "Yes, but I'm a doctor." And I went on to educate myself and to read as widely as possible so I can be a major part of the team and lead the federation successfully through the pandemic.
Yes, and I really want to publicly say congratulations. You did an excellent job. There was no previous script as to where to go. There was no previous script. Well, I have to do it from an individual perspective, because each individual would have had to build his own capacity by reading and better understanding. There was no script for you to read from. There was no trajectory to follow. You learn as you go. Sometimes you might say something that might not have been most perfect, And then you come the next and you realize it, and you just recalibrate the preference scale with respect to the knowledge that you're putting out there.
That's so true.
Yeah, hardly in your script. You make up situations where you just have to think. And that is why when some people say they don't know why they're teaching maths and calculus, something you might not use the stuff that you learn in mathematics, but it would have opened up that grammar. It would cause you to find somewhere, some pathway to move from where you are to where you ought to be. You wouldn't always use everything that you would have learned, but the fact that your mind would have opened up. Because if you only did test of standard in primary school and somebody else did calculus at university, it is expected that the person who did calculus would have a better capacity to understand even an economic question than you would have who only did test of standard mathematics.
But it's interesting you would say that because when I was in high school, in addition to doing the sciences, I did French and Spanish. And I haven't uttered a word of French in many, many years, but I was in a situation just yesterday where there was a lady who had no idea where she was and what was going on, and she was speaking French, and I was able to pick up a couple of words and answer her and direct her in a certain direction. And I said to myself, look out this French that Mademoiselle Richards taught me that
Mademoiselle
I did not read
Richards.
water.
Yes.
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 And so sometimes you never know how it will come in, but that's why I say knowledge is power, because it is back there in your gray matter, and at some point in time you will call upon it.
Well, how is your Spanish?
Well, my Spanish is pretty good also. I heard Nital is trying to speak some Spanish earlier tonight. And I'll start off by saying Buenas noches.
I said buena suerte. Good luck.
Good luck. No, but he's telling
I
you.
thought it was noche you were trying to say. But
No,
you
not
make a
noches.
mistake.
Buena suerte. Good luck.
Okay.
Doctor would make me laugh all the time when he tries to speak Spanish to the patients.
Well,
The accent.
No, I will tell you something, Nita. I always believe, right? If you speak loud enough to somebody, they will understand.
I suppose if you gesticulate with it, they'll get a better idea of what you want them to know.
Yeah, so all you have to do is just to have two syllables and some volume, and they will understand.
You remember one day we had that particular patient and all of us trying to speak to the lady in Spanish, but the lady never spoke one word of Spanish. You remember that?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, the lady.
She said, I'm speaking English. Why you are speaking English?
We're all trying to speak Spanish to her, but the woman is an English speaking.
You just presume that she was
Yeah, we
Spanish.
presume that she was.
That presumption.
That was really funny that day. Everybody's trying to speak to her in Spanish.
That was funny. So I am happy to see that Dr. Osbourne is up and running. I see that the person who I mentored is off to a great start. I'm happy that the Federation will have the benefit of her expertise. And I just want to tell all of the persons who I had the honor and privilege to care for over the last 25 years that I know that some persons would have preferred if I stayed, but there always has to be succession, and the person who has stepped into my shoes is Dr. Natalie Osbourne. We worked together for many years, and over the last 10 or so years, I believe all of the patients who were booked through my office or who I saw at the hospital, we worked together. And so she knows almost every single patient who I cared for over the last several years, and she has stepped into my shoes. I think that she would have mentioned that she has a private office. Her office is at B2 Science Complex, where I once occupied, and so all of my patients should feel comfortable knowing that there is someone there to continue to care for them with the same dedication and passion that I had when I was there.
Thank you, Dr. Wilkinson. That means so much to me hearing that from you. So thank you so much.
And Nital, there's one other thing I want to add, because sometimes I hear people asking me about if I resigned. I did not resign. I retired. Retirement age is 55. I think I turned 60 on the 20th of April. Hint, I hope that you send that gift that you promised me.
Most certainly.
Yes, okay. And so you can see, I think I was 4 years over the retirement age. I graciously moved on.
Can you repeat that last bit? You said you graciously did what?
Moved on.
Okay. No, it kind of blocked out, so that's why
there was
I
some
wanted
steric
Yes.
hindrance there. But we want
Maybe
to...
Nital needs to make sure that they service the internet down there.
But I guess the message is with the receiver. You're correct.
Yes.
The message is always with the receiver.
And no, but Dr. Wilkinson, I think that many persons, I would say this, behind the scenes, would not know the tremendous contribution that doctor has made. And I've seen it in the middle of the night, in the early hours of the morning, working late, and then coming back early, still with a smile on his face, doing so many things in one single day, accomplishing so many things without a complaint, because he never complained about the work. He just kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it. He would be sitting there, we'll be having 13 cases doing, and in between cases, he's writing a report, he's reading something about COVID for a presentation that he has later on. And I was witness to a lot of these things, and then I said, this is somebody I would love to emulate, that I would love to pattern of her. So that's why I said he has been a tremendous mentor, and so many persons did not see what I saw over the years. And so publicly, I would like to thank him as well for the time that he has taught me and the dedication that he's given to the hospital and his contribution. And sometimes I myself have been fearful and thinking, can I step up to the plate? Can I do what he would have done? Because this is somebody who's worked really hard and has given so much of himself. And I said, can I even do half of what he's done? And if I can do half of what he's done, I think I would have done quite a bit.
Quite a bit.
So I am proud to have known him. I'm proud to have worked with him over the years. And at this phase in my life, I am proud to actually call him a friend. So thank you, Dr. Wilkinson, for everything you've done.
Could I ask a foolish question, a seemingly foolish question? Back
Well,
then...
you once told me no question is foolish, ever go ahead.
Those times when you had persons coming in by the droves with respect to injury, gunshot injury, and the likes, you ever had to toss a coin and say which patient you'll take to the theater first or look after first? You ever reach close to that particular juncture?
Well, in medicine, we have something that's called a triad system.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've had situations before where you would have had 2 or 3 persons coming with gunshot wounds, and you determine which one is more life-threatening, and you determine which one you take to the operating theater based on the
severity.
the risk
And
the severity.
of the
Yeah,
injury.
so I would not necessarily call it tossing a coin, but you try and see who you can save and who can wait, etc. And sometimes when you're operating on one, you have to operate with a sense of urgency, knowing that there's another person who's out there who you have to take care of. And sometimes the decisions could be a tough one. I remember I had a situation before where there was a gentleman who attacked a citizen. He shot the citizen shot the gentleman, and so the person who had to go in first was the supposed perpetrator of the crime. And so, and there are some persons who would have said, well, take the other person who was attacked first. But when you're in medicine, you are not the one who determines who was right or who was wrong. Your decision is based on the clinical scenario and the severity.
And your oath, your Hippocratic oath.
Yes, and so I would have been criticized for taking in the person who people would have called the criminal first, but you try to save our lives, and so sometimes you have to make some tough decisions.
But there's never a criminal on a surgery table.
No, and that's the point I'm making.
There's never a criminal on a surgery table.
I believe, though, sometimes the more you do, the more people expect of you. And I'm sure that Dr. Osbourne would have seen, where, for example, we went to the hospital every day, Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, okay? And sometimes if you show up at 9 o'clock on a Sunday instead of 8 o'clock, people were asking, what happened to you? You're an hour late.
Where are you late?
Don't come on a Sunday. But the persons don't come on a Sunday. They don't complain at all. And so sometimes the more you give,
Yes, so
the
more people
more
expect.
people,
Or
people
demand.
expect you.
Yeah.
And sometimes too, when you don't complain, people don't understand the pressures that you're under. I know that during the height of the crime and violence, there were times when I worked alone there. There are many nights when I went out to operate, and when you go back home, you close your eyes, you're seeing blood, you're seeing, and I remember one time I was talking to you and you told me, that might have been some post-traumatic stress that you were going through.
Yes.
So he was diagnosing you at that time.
And that is why I always believe that a surgeon must have some degree of psychopathic tendencies. No, serious. Yes, it will go a long way because you'll have to, like Dr. Wilkinson said, that he saw blood and those other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And if you're strong enough to have the mindset that I'm going to go home and those things just wouldn't cross my mind, that is being psychopathic. And all of us psychopathic to a certain extent. And they're saying that surgeon must have this as part of their tools, that psychopathic tendency.
Well, I would just...
you have to learn to dissociate yourself from the situations, because you cannot take the stress home, because then it means that you would have no peace anywhere at all in your life, and so there are times when you just have to shut off what happens at the hospital and move forward. And that's one of the reasons too why I always kept a circle of friends outside of the hospital, because you want, when you are talking to people, you can just talk about light things, different conversations,
But when those conversations finish, it takes quite a bit of active energy not for you to be reminded of things that you did.
That is so true.
That's an active gradient. You have to try. You try to put things behind you, but it's right in front of you. It's in your memory bank. Maybe you could avoid triggers, but not all the time you'll be able to avoid those triggers in terms of bringing back those to the forefront.
And it's also important too, because you're going to have to separate, because when you have a bad case or difficult case or case that would have met its demise, sorry to say, you then have to move on and care for another patient and give them that 100%. So you cannot be thinking and focusing on the one before, or you won't be able to give 100% to the one at present. So
that is why I
what
said that each surgeon has some degree of psychopath about them. You're psychopathic.
Oh, but
you have to be.
Dr. Osbourne was with me many times before, where we might have had a serious gunshot wound victim, and we did our best, and the person expire on the table, and you have to move on to the next case in 15-20 minutes, and you have to get your mind back in order to focus again. You understand? Sometimes you start a case and you're not going to finish for 4 hours, and I always tell Dr. Osbourne, don't look at the clock. Serious, because if you look at that clock, you torture.
There were days, Nital, I would wish he would be vexed with me, like follow and chase me out of the operation, like just that I don't have to stand up in those long cases.
Yes.
Because it was tough. It was tough.
But that can be charged to
I
experience.
remember, Nital,
Yes.
when I was going off to study, and I said I was interested in surgery, I went around talking to some of the older doctors to get advice, etc. And some of them gave me some long lectures, some of them gave me some books, etc. And the one who gave me the best advice, God bless his soul, at the time I thought it was the worst advice. It was Dr. Lofton Richardson, and he said, boy, the only thing I have to tell you, if you want to be a surgeon, you need to learn to stand up. and I was saying to myself, I wonder what is this man telling me, until I was in like the first 8-hour operation.
Yes.
And I understood
What that meant.
because a lot of people don't understand what it is to stand in one position with
For
your back
hours.
bent, your neck bent,
Yeah.
and you cannot move until you're finished.
Are they accommodating stockings for
Well, if
for
you
long standing?
well, you would have to get your own. Well, at least for us here, if you want those, and they're very helpful in certain instances. But yes, you can have those. I remember one particular night, took several nights like that. You went into the operating room in daylight, and you came out the other day in daylight, and you're just like so amazed.
Forgetting
Yeah.
which day it is.
Yeah, just the hours.
You also have to have a strong bladder.
And that crossed my mind today. I said, when they have to go through those long sessions, I know sometimes you go to the drugstore and you ask the pharmacist for a tablet of medication to prevent a child from peeing his bed too often. And they have that. But then guys started to misuse it and abuse it.
So what are you
Because-
suggesting, that the surgeon takes a medication?
No, like Dr. Wilkinson said, you have to be very strong for your bladder. You have to know what to consume. If it's going to be about a 4 hour, you don't want to drink a lot of water and that sort of stuff. And you have to say, hold on there, I got to go to the bathroom. And
But that means you have
might
to
have to
scrub
do it
out
in-
and stuff.
maybe you have to do it in Pampers. Just
But
like,
if you want to be a successful doctor, successful surgeon, you have to be totally committed, because it is not just the day after surgery, but every decision you make in your life is surrounded about your work. Because, like the day after surgery, you need to make sure you get a good night's sleep before. There are times when you want to go out with your friends, but you know that you have to work harder to the next day, and so you have to be in bed by 10 o'clock or whatever. So there are a lot of things that you wish you could have done that you couldn't do. Many times I was downtown jamming Juve morning, drinking water.
I'm minding your business.
Just hoping that
You don't
nothing
get a
happens.
call, yes.
And and there are many times too, after you finish enjoying yourself, before you know it, you got a call, because most of the incidents tend to occur close to midday, when people have been up all night, they've been drinking, they're tired, they're dehydrated, and they
Yes.
get into altercations that ordinarily they would not have gotten into. And that's one of the reasons why many years ago we made the decision to stop the jamming, etc., by 12 midday, because it was after that time when most of the incidents occurred.
Statistics. Important to do some correlation when you want to move forward.
Anyway, I don't want to take up too much of your time. You told me that we were just going to talk for 3 minutes. Is it 3 minutes up? I know you're a mathematician.
Just about 40 more seconds.
Just about 40 more. Well, doctor, any closing comments, or anything you'd like to say before you head out?
Well, if you had me on video, you'd have seen that I was smiling all along the way throughout this conversation, because I am very happy. I am happy for you. I know that you put the time in. You stayed on track. You stayed the course, and I know that the future is bright for you. I am happy that you chose me as your mentor. I know, for example, having trained in Cuba, and they, for example, would not have had a lot of gunshot wounds there because I don't think that guns are easily accessible there.
Correct.
And so, all you would have trained as a general surgeon, you would not have been exposed to the trauma that would have been seen in St. Kitts over several years. I was trained at a level 1 trauma center, and I was able to pass that knowledge on to you. I know that you, for example, were not trained as an endoscopist, but you worked with me for many years, and I was able to pass the knowledge and the skill about endoscopy on to you. And so that in combination with all that you learned in Cuba, you have a melting pot of experience that
Correct.
will stay with you for life, and that you will build upon and be a great surgeon. And so I am very happy for you. I'm happy for the people of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. And although I'm gone, if I happen to be visiting and you invite me into the operating room with you, I'll be happy to come and
assist.
Observe. There's a big difference between observe and assist, right, Nital?
But you could assist by observing.
Okay.
Moral support.
Moral support. Okay.
We are hoping that that privilege will be granted to you and you will embrace it fully, and whenever the need arises, that you can be of assistance. We never know what can happen. We just want to maintain that privilege intact, that
Yes.
whenever the opportunity calls, that you can respond appropriately.
And he's also promised me I could call him any time of the day and night if I have a case or I have any concern. Didn't you say that, doctor?
Of course, of course.
Yes.
Not just you. I
Yes.
mentioned in my retirement letter that I'm a phone call away. So I'm deeply passionate about the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. I committed 25 years of my life there because I love the country, and I could have been there for 25 years and spent half of it on vacation, the other half on sick leave. But
That's a good
yes,
one.
but, I really put in 25 years, and if you count the number of hours based on the time that I was working there, it's probably even more. And I'm still willing to help in any way that I can, and I will continue to do anything that I can to promote my federation, my birthplace, the place that gave me the start. And anytime that I'm back home, I'll be willing to join and assist in any way that I can. And so the lines will always be open.
Well
because
said.
St. Kitts and Nevis will always be there to me.
Well, we would certainly welcome you at any juncture, and I think that would even be an appearance of encouragement to the younger doctors. It's always nice to see one with experience coming around and admiring and nodding his or her head in agreement with things that would have been done, or maybe shrug a shoulder and pull somebody aside and whisper something in the ear. There's always the opportunity to do those things. And with maturity, as a country, we can only grow and glow when we have that degree of maturity to accept things of that nature.
And Nital, on another note now, because one of the things that I've found is that I was never ever given enough credit for my athletic ability, my cricketing skills, etc. And when I come home, one of the things I want to do is to take you up to the King Collins Highway. I mean, the King Collins
Pavilion?
Stadium, yes.
Okay.
And we're going to have a 100 meters dash race so that we can put this thing once
Put it to rest for once and for all.
Yes.
To determine.
I realized we went full circles. You started out with a dream and you have ended with a dream. So consistent.
So that's one of the first things I'm going to do when I get back home there. We're going to go right up there. And Dr. Osbourne, you'll be the timekeeper.
Yes. Yes, I will. All right.
I'm happy that she'll be there with her gears as well. You never know who might be in need. Cameron, thanks a lot, man. It's always a pleasure. We still have our special session to do whenever the time is most ideal for both of us. And the country will be waiting on that. But we'll continue to push Dr. Osbourne as much as possible into the realm of wholesome acceptance, somebody with confidence and somebody you can put your medical trust and issues to. And I know that she'll do an excellent job. She's a God-fearing person as well. And that supreme being of which nothing greater can be perceived will always be a part of her nucleus of sensitivity. Okay?
All right.
Okay, thank you. Good night.
Okay,
Bye.
okay,
Take
good
care.
night.
Okay,
bye-bye.
take care, Cameron. Could we take a quick break, please?
Welcome to the customer support portal, where we have made it easier for you to contact us. It starts with your question, email, a message, phone call, or a search on our website. Our CSP provides prompt and efficient solutions to your problems. We pride ourselves on treating our clients responsibly and ensuring your information is kept safe. Log on to www.skndb.net and send us a ticket or email us at customersupport@skndb.com. You may also call us directly at 869-465-2288, extension 1322, or 954-353-1003.
If you have a dream, what are you waiting for? The Development Bank has what you need and more. We aim to build stronger communities. That's why we have so many opportunities. Business loans, student loans, we make a positive difference in your life, in your life, in your life, in your life, yeah. Financing your dream home, we make a positive difference in your life, in your life, in your life, in your life, yeah. Development Bank of St. Kitts and Nevis. We make a sustained positive difference in your life.
Fellow citizens, near and far, join Newrish Nital on Sugar Soda 90.3 for Fear No Favor.
Where is one? Where is the cancer man? No runner come out for war.
Tune in to 90.3 on your FM dial. Log on to sugarcityfmstkits.com or download Simple Radio app from the Google Play Store. And join Newrish Nital every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. as Newrish Nital tackles the issues and take your call. Fear No Favor. Every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. on Sugar City 90.3 FM.
Welcome back to Fear in Our Favor. We did have a very interesting first segment, and we are now going into the next segment. Dr. Osbourne, now we will pivot to the second segment of the show. Yes? Ballet dance, sublime. How to prepare for your surgery. Here we'll discuss some of the do's and don'ts before undergoing any surgical procedure. What is the first step in this preparation, Dr. Osbourne?
Okay, usually your first step in preparing for any surgery, whether it be a minor or major surgery, is your preoperative assessment. That essentially means that you're seen by your surgeon, you're assessed, a diagnosis is made. Oftentimes you may have done or need to do some laboratory blood works. You may need to, based on your history, if you have diabetes, hypertension, you may need to have a EKG or checking your heart, do a heart test. You may need to have a chest x-ray based on your history or your age or your comorbidities. You want to keep that in mind. And then once your doctor is comfortable and has made the correct diagnosis and have done all the necessary work and figure that you're fit and in a good condition, we can then proceed with the procedure, with whatever the procedure is. So usually that's the first step. Get all your works done, get your diagnosis made, make sure that you're fit and well enough to undergo any procedure.
What arrangements should one make in the days leading up to the surgery date?
That is very important and very interesting question because oftentimes persons are confused as to what to do. But usually you want to make, especially if you're doing a day procedure, because there are different types of procedures. You could have an outpatient procedure where you just come in and that particular day having a procedure done. Oftentimes those are what we call minor procedures, or you may have like one of the endoscopies, a colonoscopy, a gastroscopy, any type of procedures like that. And you may want to make arrangement. That is one of the most important things. Who's going to take you to the procedure? Who's going to collect you? Because if you're undergoing any sort of anesthesia, whether you're going to a local anesthesia, general anesthesia, or even what we call sedation, where you're not fully asleep, but you're kind of drowsy. You're not allowed to, or you're not encouraged to drive for the next 24 hours. So at that point, you want to make arrangements so that you can have someone collect you after you would have done the procedure. That is very important. Make sure you give your friends and your family members plenty of notice in terms of the visiting hours if you're going to be hospitalized, because that is also important so that you do not come. Oftentimes, patients may come to the hospital and unaware that there are limited visiting hours and restricted visiting hours. So it's important that they're given that information. So you check with the hospital and what are the hospital policies to ensure that your family and your friends can visit you. So it's very important.
Doctors often tell patients not to eat or drink. Why is that so?
That's a good question as well, too, because oftentimes patients, you as a doctor, will tell your patient something and then the patient would do something else because their neighbor would tell them to do something else. But why is it important? Usually it's because you're going under general anesthesia. What does that mean? You're going to be put to sleep. You're going to be away from yourself. And you want the stomach to be empty, so that the person does not vomit and what we call aspirate. What does that mean? That you do not want any of the stomach content to get into the lungs and create a serious health problem. So that is why it's important to know whether you can eat or should not eat before procedure. And that is usually if you're going to be sedated, as we said, or having general anesthesia. At times, if you're having local anesthesia where you're not going to be put to sleep, you're just getting an injection to deaden that area or numb that area, you may be allowed to have a light breakfast. So it's always important to check with your doctor what type of anesthesia that you're going to have, and then your doctor would explain to you if you can eat or should not eat.
In regards to the medications that patients use on a daily basis, what is the recommendation before surgery?
We recommend that most patients, as we said, that they do not eat. But there are specific medications that you can and cannot take depending on the procedure that you're undergoing. Oftentimes, I'll give you an example with the diabetics or the hypertensive. You would ask your hypertensive patients to take their medication with a little bit of water early in the morning before they head out to the hospital for the procedure. Why is that important? They're already hypertensive, and the added anxiety and stress, just knowing that you're going to undergo a procedure, would cause your blood pressure to rise, and that is what you want to avoid. When in reference to your diabetic drugs, though, because you're fasting, if you're going to have general anesthesia, you do not encourage taking any of those medications, because what we want to avoid is having your blood pressure, your blood sugars to fall during that procedure. So once you're fasting and you're diabetic, you are asked not to take any insulin or not to take any oral diabetic medication. Also, to add to any type of blood thinners, if you're going for a procedure, that needs to be planned ahead with your surgeon, because you may have to stop taking your warfarin or your Coumadin a week before, depending on what other drugs you take, whether it be aspirin or Plavix. And these type of things that you will have to discuss with your doctor prior to the surgery, and they should give you the indication whether to take these drugs or not, or how soon or prior to the surgery you need to suspend these drugs.
Ladies who wear long painted nails, have piercings, etc., what is usually advised to these persons?
Well, all that is a part of the preoperative hygiene as well. But in reference to the long nails and the painted nails, oftentimes we have what we call an SpO2 monitor, where you're testing the saturation or the oxygen level in your blood. And once you have long nails and those false nails, that little equipment does not pick that up easily. And often you can judge the patient's blood volume, whether they are losing quite a bit of blood, by looking at the nail bed, the color that is seen in their nail bed. So that is why it's important to remove all the polish. When it comes to piercing, there's an equipment, a machine that we use quite often at the hospital that is called an electrocautery, where we use it to cut. So it uses electricity. So what you want to avoid is these patients having any sort of metal object in them, so they can have any kind of burn to any area. So you're encouraged not to have those piercings and stuff. You're also encouraged, if you're going for a day procedure, to take a bath. Based on the area where you're having the procedure, you want to make sure, advise the patient if they need to shave before they go in prior to doing the procedure. Do you understand? Sometimes you want to make sure that if you're going to do a procedure involving the axilla, you don't want to put any deodorant and any kind of creams or oils or lotion in those areas once you're going to have any kind of incision or procedure to those particular areas.
Okay, quite informative. What should a patient pack for the hospital?
Well, the patient, depending on the length of stay, if it's a day procedure, you just want to make sure you wear comfortably clothing at the morning there. You want to just have an ID there. Your important things, maybe you need your cell phone, you have your glasses, anything that is essential at that point. If you're going to be admitted or hospitalized, you may need more stuff. Oftentimes our patient may not know this. You may need to take your nightgowns. It's very important too, when you choose a particular nightgown, it is best to have one that opens at the front, or your pajamas, so that your surgeon can have access to your wound, your area, whether it is an abdominal wound, whether it's an incision in the breast. So those clothes that are easy accessible, you want to make sure that your clothing is comfortable as well, loose. You want to make sure you take your toiletries, your toothbrush, toothpaste, your hands, your soaps and different things like that, towels, and maybe a hairbrush, a comb. And if you're going to be there several days, you may want to have maybe your computer, book to read, something to kind of entertain yourself or keep yourself busy during that period. And especially you want to take any medications that you use routinely, so the staff in the hospital, your doctor, your nurses would know what medication that you use.
Okay. For those patients who go to the hospital for their procedures, How should transportation be organized?
I think that we made a bit of mention to that earlier. Your best bet is to communicate with a family member, a friend who can collect you at the hospital, drop you off, or make that arrangement with them so that if you would have had general anesthesia or you're sedated, that you do not drive home, because that would not be recommended for the next 24 hours after having the procedure.
Can you give a summary of the do's and don'ts for the pre-surgery preparations?
And you know, Nital, why we chose this topic, because oftentimes patients are unaware of exactly what to do, and we do not have these educational sessions often enough where patients are informed of what can be done or what should be done. So in summary for what we would have just said, I would give you some ideas of do's prior to any surgical procedure. You want to check with your doctor and to make sure, or in regards to the medications that you can take or should take on the morning of the surgery. We spoke about your diabetic medication. We spoke about your medication for high blood pressure. We also spoke about medications if you are on blood thinners. You want to also to check with your doctor, as we said earlier, whether you're going to stop any blood thinners. You want to arrange for a responsible adult to drive you home and to stay with you. We often ask our patients, is someone going to be with you for the next 24 hours? So you want to do that. If you're unable to have anybody to assist you drive your company, if you cannot be hospitalized, sometimes the procedure may have to be postponed. You want to also plan to bring all your necessities to the hospital. We spoke about that. If you use glasses, your hearing aids, even your computer, your laptop, anything that you may want to do to help pass the time to read, all your toiletries and stuff. Make sure you wear loose and comfortable clothing. We said that. And you want to remove all jewelry as much as possible. Leave them at home. And try not to take too much money to the hospital so you don't have any problems with that too. Take a shower before going in for your procedure, usually that morning. All right. And we also said if you want to avoid all these high perfumes, body oils, and creams and stuff to the area where you would be having the procedure.
What about jewelry?
So I said that we encourage persons to leave their jewelry, the expensive jewelry, their nice stuff at home. During the procedure, I don't think you're going to be interested in how you look in those and having those stuff.
Yeah, those married rings, some people don't want to have them off at all.
Yes.
Some of them can't even come off easily. Sometimes I wonder how they'll get them off. What about the don'ts, though?
We want to encourage the patients. One of the don'ts is that you don't want to drink during the hours prior to your surgery, all right? You want to, importantly, we encourage our patient not to have anything to eat or drink after midnight. We spoke earlier about what not to eat or drink after. So after midnight, you want to ensure that the stomach is empty to avoid any complication during the procedure and to ensure that the patient does not aspirate. So you want to discourage them from even drinking water, coffee, or anything like that, okay? You also want to discourage any patient from smoking tobacco, smoking cigarettes on the the night before they undergo a procedure, because that can interfere with how they respond to the anesthetic machine, the anesthesia and the medication. We've noticed persons who use quite a bit of marijuana, it's much more difficult to sedate them or to get them on the general anesthesia. So that is important. And we also spoke about the medications like your aspirin, your warfarin or Coumadin, and any anti-inflammatory. You want to communicate clearly with your doctor when you should stop these medications prior to surgery. And those are more or less the summary of what we had there talking about. I don't know if your audience would have any questions for us.
Usually you will see a signal coming. But sometimes it is good when we don't have interruptions because persons can now go back and replay this.
Okay.
It will be available for replaying. Let us take a break, acknowledge our sponsor, and come back.
Welcome to the customer support portal, where we have made it easier for you to contact us. It starts with your question, email, a message, phone call, or a search on our website. Our CSP provides prompt and efficient solutions to your problems. We pride ourselves on treating our clients responsibly and ensuring your information is kept safe. Log on to www.skndb.net and send us a ticket or email us at customersupport@skndb.com. You may also call us directly at 869-465-2288, extension 1322, or 954-353-1003.
If you have a dream, what are you waiting for? The Development Bank has what you need and more. We aim to build stronger communities. That's why we have so many opportunities. Business loans, student loans, we make a positive difference in your life, in your life, in your life, in your life. Yeah, financing your dream home, we make a positive difference in your life, in your life, in your life, in your life. Yeah. Development Bank of St. Kitts and Nevis. We make a sustained positive difference in your life.
Fellow citizens, near and far, join Newrish Nital on Sugar Soda 90.3 for Fear No Favor.
Where is the cancer man who run a come out for war?
Tune in to 90.3 on your FM dial. Log on to sugarcityfmsankits.com or download Simple Radio app from the Google Play Store. And join Newrish Nital every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. as Newrish Nital tackles the issues and take your call. Fear No Favor. Every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. on Sugar City 90.3 FM.
Would you stand up and see your country dying and never lend a helping hand? Would you see your children's future dwindling, creating?
Welcome back to Fear No Favor, our final minutes. For anyone who may be interested in your services, where your office is located?
The office is located at B2 Sands Complex. I think Dr. Wilkinson, when he was on earlier, made mention to that because I originally had a small practice in Market Street, but after Dr. Wilkinson retired, I merged both practices. So then the physical location is in B2 complex, the Sands Complex, that down at the Bay Road there in Bastia. All right.
Oftentimes, patients think they need a referral to see a surgeon. Is that really so?
No, the simple answer for that would be no, because with the advent of the internet, and people have so much access to information, and people are quite aware. Oftentimes, persons know what their diagnosis is. They might have a hernia, they might have a lump in the breast, or what or maybe have an abscess. And you know that usually it's managed by the surgeon. So in that instant, you do not need a particular referral. You can go directly and see your surgeon, whichever surgeon you decide to see, so you could get medical attention quickly. But oftentimes as well, the medical specialists, the family physicians, they may see patients and they do refer patients onto the surgeon after they would have made a diagnosis, worked up the patient, and come to the conclusion that the patient needs some sort of surgical intervention, and that's where the referral comes in. But what the patient doesn't need to do is just sit and wait thinking that they must see their family physician before they see the general surgeon. That's not so.
As a general surgeon, what are some of the services you offer?
Oh, that's a good one. General surgery basically is the mother of surgery, and then with the advent of time, we started dividing surgery into different areas. Now you have the neurosurgeon, then you have the cardiothoracic surgeon, now you have the gastrointestinal specialist, you have the different types of surgeon now, the vascular surgeon, the orthopedic. So as a general surgeon, you were taught in all of these areas. So you have a wealth of knowledge of all of these areas. Neurosurgery, you understand, ENT, orthopedic surgery. So that is why you're called the general surgeon. But today, the general surgeon focuses more on the neck, the chest, the abdomen. Here, because we also have limited surgeons, the general surgeon does a little bit more. You can do any lumps and bumps, soft tissue swellings and masses. If you have a pathology in the breast, surgeons deal with the hernias, the thyroids, the gallbladders. If you have a problem with your gallbladder, your surgeon can do that. If you have a pathology in the colon, okay, or your intestines, the surgeon can deal with that. As Dr. Wilker said earlier, the surgeon can do endoscopy. I learned how to do endoscopy with his assistants over the years, okay, to help make a diagnosis if there is a pathology inside of the colon. There's a pathology inside of the stomach. You can do any one of those procedures. So those are the general stuff that the surgeon does. And we do quite a bit of trauma, stab wounds that come in, motor vehicle accident. If there is an injury to the neck, an injury to the chest, a stab wound to the chest or so, the person might have fallen, having a fracture of a rib, which injured the lung. You have a lung that is collapsed. So the general surgery does quite a bit and a little bit of everything.
Quite interesting. I would ask a question. When someone is going for surgery, is there a consent form that has to be signed? If the person is incapable of signing that form, who's next?
Okay, usually for the minors, anyone I think under the age of 18, your adult or guardian, your parent would sign that consent form firstly. So you would explain to the family and to the patient as well what the procedure is, why you're doing this procedure, and then that person will then sign the consent form. If you have an elderly person who may not have the mental capacity or somebody who has a psychiatric illness, then you always refer to the next of kin or a guardian, someone who's a immediate family member. That person would then make the decision and will sign off on the consent.
Very, very interesting. When someone has, for example, to remove a limb, a foot, it has become absolutely necessary to do that. Is there any degree of counseling before that is done, once the opportunity affords itself to have it done?
Yes, and it's good to know we do have counselors at the hospital, so usually we do that. That's part of the preoperative assessment as well. If you see that the patient is having, as you said, suggests a loss of limb, something that is really significant, and most patients and all patients should be given some level of psychological counseling. And so we encourage patients. We see that they're not, for example, they're not ready or they're not in that state where they've accepted the diagnosis or accepted what has to be done. Then the counselor would come in, speak to them in different sessions, and help them to get to the point to realize, because if it's something that needs to be done in order to save their lives, oftentimes that's where the counselor comes in.
So on that form that a patient is signing to say, yes, I have given you permission to have my appendix removed. And then while in there, you find something disastrous that can be life-threatening. How does the surgeon make a decision? Do you just do what you went in to do and come out and just leave that? What is happening? Tell us what happens.
Well, that is very important too. If there is a life-threatening finding, you would have to do what needs to be done. Also, a part of the consent form, you're signing for an appendectomy, as you mentioned, and there's another section that says any other thing that is deemed necessary to save the life. So there is that part there. Because, for example, I would say you go in, you're thinking it's the appendix. There is an ectopic pregnancy, and you call in the OBGYN or the gynecologist at that time, and you're unable to control the bleeding. And, for example, you have to make a swift decision. Do I do a hysterectomy or remove the womb, and the lady may never be able to have her children again? So those are really tough decisions, but sometimes in order to save the life, you would have to make that decision. There are times where the surgeon may have to step out or scrub out, speak to the next of kin or the family members and explain to them what is going on, and then continue the case if that permits, especially if you're working in a large team and there are several different surgeons. So you can do that as well to ensure that the family is aware of what is going on. But the consent form that you sign also has that anything else that is important or deemed necessary that needs to be done.
By whom?
By whom? Well, a life-saving thing. As you said, you go in. I will give you another example. You go in, and we've had these cases. You go in, and you think that the problem was the appendix. But say that you find a tumor or a cancer in the colon, and you have to do a resection of the colon. So you're not going to come out of that surgery and say, oh, let's close up, come out, and then bring the patient back. While you have the patient there, and you know that you can do this to save the life of the patient, then you would proceed.
Interesting.
But some decisions will be tougher than some. There are instances where if the procedure is not deemed urgent or emergent at that point, you can then say, we can give time and then come back. Do you follow? There's some cases you may find that you go in, you see something else, you said, okay, I will need to discuss this further with the patient. However, it is not life-threatening at this moment, so it give us some time so the patient can be counseled, or the patient can then decide what they want to do or what is the best course of action.
You ever had a situation where somebody resisted surgery, especially the taking off of a leg?
Of course, that happens very often and sometimes we really have to pause and realize that it's a life-altering decision when you have to remove a limb. But when a doctor says that you have to remove a limb, it's not because you just want to remove a limb. Oftentimes in our society, because we have a small society, persons will think, oh, this doctor just wants to go cutting off limb. And sometimes we've had that label being placed on some of our surgeons. But that is not it. It's the end results of years of damage. Oftentimes we have patients who are diabetics, long-standing diabetics, and because they're poorly managed and they do not follow their dietary routines, over the years, you see that there's a breakdown, and you see that there is problems and complications, so that when they get to the hospital and you see that the limb is gangrenous, that's a medical term, or we say septic, or in local terms somebody says rotten, that is the end result of years of damage. And then you speak to the patient at that point and you say, well, you need to have this limb amputated. They get emotional. That's where the counseling comes into play. But this is something that you have to do if you're going to save the patient's life. But it's difficult at times, very difficult.
Sometimes somebody could just utterly refuse.
Yes, because The person does have autonomy at the end of the day, and if they refuse, but you explain to them, you would usually call them in, call in the family, have a discussion with them, let them know the pros and the cons, the consequences of not proceeding, and ultimately some patients would say, I am not going to go along with the procedure, and then you know that once they're clear of the consequences, all right, you do that.
How well is non-conventional medicine being paired with the conventional type? Do you have doctors? I realize, for example, you have diabetic patients who are being prescribed cinnamon capsules.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was sort of shocked. I witnessed that about maybe a year and a half ago. You know
By a
that-
herbalist or by the traditional
by
physician?
the traditional
Uh-huh.
physician.
Well, I do not know much
Are we
about
getting it incorporated? Are we willing to accept that they must go hand in hand? I don't know. I'm just asking.
And my best response would be, I cannot speak much on that because that is not an area of my expertise and I would not dare to venture in that. But I believe in traditional medicine. I also believe the importance of eating healthy and exercising, and where that comes into play, where as a diabetic, if you eat well, follow a strict and necessary diet, you exercise, you can control your blood sugars, okay, and prevent long-term complications and damage to your limbs, to your blood vessels, to your nerves. And that is what I believe in. So that is where healthy living, overall healthy living, eating, exercise, diet, and overall wellness. But I would not venture in discussing the herbal medicine because that is not my area and I do not know much about that. So I would leave that alone for that. But I believe in healthy living, overall wellness. And I would combine that with your medications and the traditional medicine and way that we've practiced for thousands of years.
Yes. No, I agree, but at some point there must be some sort of hybridization where we can rely a little bit more here because the cinnamon capsules, for example, I understand from my friend that it works very well, but then you have some doctors who do not want to hear anything about that.
I would give you a story. Many years ago, we had a patient in particular, and she always stuck in my mind. She was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she chose not to go the route of traditional medicine. And I think she was getting treated by a herbal physician. And as she started to deteriorate, then she was sent back to the traditional medical team, and we saw her. And at that point, the disease was very advanced, and she deteriorated and eventually lost her battle against the disease. So I do not personally subscribe to it. To each his own when it comes to it. I know that healthy living and natural medicine plants and a plant-based diet and stuff has its benefits, and most of the medicine can be from natural sources as well. But I do strongly am a proponent of the traditional medicine because I think that science has been studied for hundreds of years and it has its place.
Okay, well, basically we have come to the end of our session today, and we want to promise the listening audience and those who are viewing and listening that we would be having Dr. Osbourne at least once monthly to do some topical issue that we need to be better informed about so that we can make wiser decisions and be informed so that we can live more comfortably with our practices, our culture, our lifestyle, and our way of maybe eating or dieting. And I think it would be a welcome occasion when we have you at least on a monthly basis. I hope you're looking forward to that. There are many, many issues that we can discuss so that persons can be better
Informed. Correct.
Right? So maybe you can tell them, yes, we will be doing this.
Yes, I would make that commitment that I would be visiting you on a regular basis at
Regular
least.
basis.
And you will
Yes.
determine how often that would be. And we'll discuss different topics,
just
surgical topic principle, because I like to focus on the area that I'm stronger in, you know.
Yes, of course, of course. And I don't know if you have any parting words, comforting words.
My words would simply be that no one is indispensable, and everyone have their time and season, and I strongly believe that it is important to educate the generation that is coming behind us so that we continue to raise the standard in our federation. And I would have benefited from those who came before me. I would have strongly benefited from the support, the mentorship of Dr. Cameron Wilkinson and the staff that is in the other consultants that are at the hospital as well too. And I hope that someday someone would be able to say that they've benefited from my knowledge and my education, because that is where it is extremely important that we do not leave this earth with that with a wealth of knowledge. We've got to share it so that we continue to build our community, build our healthcare system, and so that our people are ultimately better off at the end of the day and they benefit from it. So that would be my parting word.
Just before you part, just one question. You have a lot of young persons around who would like to go and pursue medicine. Is there an area of speciality that you think is really needed around here that we do not have?
Oh, yes. There are several areas, but we would have to balance it out, because as a small federation too, we may never be able to have all of the different subspecialties, you know, because it makes it difficult because we don't have the volume. But yes, of course, we ultimately at some point we're going to need a neurosurgeon. We're going to need an endocrinologist. That's the person that deals with the thyroid, all those endocrine systems and stuff, diabetes, you know, these details. We may need more nephrologists. We're going to need more internists. Sometimes we're limited at the hospital. Persons are getting burnt out. Okay, so we're going to need those specialties, and we'll continue to grow. But persons, so if you're genuinely interested in medicine, there's a broad scope. But you have to know too, if you're coming back to the federation, because somewhat the reality of our limitations, you have to know what you choose to do. Because if you choose a specialty, for example, let's say a rheumatologist, that's super specialized. Your scope of work may be limited in a smaller federation. So that's the truth. You still have to weigh the balances, how the volume of work you'll ultimately be getting based on the area of specialty that you choose.
And the equipment and the apparatus availability.
And the availability of our resources.
And I'm absolutely certain that any young aspiring doctors could call and have a conversation with you.
Yes, they
you
can.
might be able to find a 20, 30 minutes to
Yes.
facilitate a conversation of guidance. Well, we have come to the end of our session, and I really appreciate the fact that Dr. Osbourne would have taken time out of our extra busy schedule to come and be a part of the Sugar City family and presentation today, Thursday. And like I said, we're expecting to have at least once monthly, and if necessary, maybe twice a month, depending on what's in the air. We know that her schedule would be hectic, and we'll really relish any opportunity that she presents to us to make sure that we get information out there. The more information we get out there, is the more educated a society will be, and the more educated a society will be, the more we act with maturity with respect to our health. Once again, Dr. Osbourne, thank you very much, and a special thank you to Dr. Wilkinson, who called in and really put some fuel in the fire of our discussion, and for endorsing you as well. When you get endorsement from a person like Dr. Wilkinson, it carries a value. Okay? Well, we have come to the end once again. Thanks to those who listen, and thanks to our sponsor, the Development Bank, for the continued supply of oxygen for the sustenance of this all-important social program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Opinions and statements made by the host and participants in this program are not those of the owners